Good afternoon and welcome to another Lebanon Senior Center craft demo. Today we are going to be talking about some basics on how you might be able to make simple Christmas decorations from felt. You just need felt, you need a little pair of scissors, or I mean it can be a big pair of scissors, whatever fabric scissors you want to use to cut your felt out, a needle and some thread. I like to use embroidery floss, and I'll show you that in a little bit. It also can be helpful to have a template. You don't have to. You can certainly make a lot of decorations designing on your own or cutting your own designs out. I printed off this little snowflake template, and I actually used just a candle base to give me a circle template. So yeah, so we're going to show you what I'm going to do with this one first, and then I'll show you a secondary idea. And of course, then we'll just talk about some more creative things you can do. So I printed this one off using my computer, just went and found a snowflake outline that I liked. So what you're going to do is then cut this out very carefully. Of course, with a snowflake, you could also make your own design, folding a piece of paper in fourths and just cutting out one corner of it, and then of course if you unfold it, then you'll have a symmetrical design all the way around, just like when we made snowflake paper cutouts as kids. So you use your handy dandy scissors, you cut out along the snowflake, and then you're going to trace it. So of course, since I was doing a snowflake, I used a white piece of felt, and I pinned my snowflake to my piece of felt. You know, if you're wild and crazy, you don't have to do that. But then I just traced, used a pen. You can use a piece of chalk, a pen, a marker, and just trace the outline of this snowflake design after I cut it out, which there it is. I wasn't sure if the white would show up on the white very well. So this is, it's cut out. And I just traced, I guess it'll show up on video. There it is. I traced around it with a pen. I happened just to use a regular marking pen. Traced around the design. And then of course, you're going to cut that design very carefully. Snowflakes can be pretty intricate, so just cut very carefully and slowly around your design. And when you have that piece, you can set it aside. I wanted to do something that was a little sharp contrast, so I thought the white would show up on this blue very nicely. So I just used a candle. Oh, here's my teacup. We'll pretend it's the candle I used. And I just traced around the cup, the candle, the round object. I picked one that my snowflake would sit in the center of and just have a little space around it. And I actually cut two of those blue circles out. Ta-da! Two blue circles. On this one, you can almost kind of see my pen line on it at certain points. And I did two because, again, this is options you have. You can sew them together, leave a little opening, and stuff some tissue, some cotton, some batting material, some fiber fill, something in there to give it a little bit of dimensional pop, make it like a little pillow, if you will. Or I'm actually going to cut a piece of cardboard, a little cardboard disc out that's round, and I'm going to slide it in between to make sure it stays kind of rigid and stiff, because of course felt is fabric and it can get a little wonky over time, and I want it to kind of help keep it stiff and stretched out and not curl up or get caught up in other ornaments of the tree. So all that said, that's why I cut out two. You can do a single one if you want, but again, felt is kind of flimsy, so I didn't think it had enough body. So I would either cut two and turn it into a little pillow, or back it with something that gives it a bit more tensile strength. Of course, if the more you layer felt, the stiffer it's going to get, the thicker the felt layers are, gives it some body. So after I cut out my round disc, we'll pretend that this is a piece of felt. I went and I centered you know, the best I could eyeball it, my piece of felt on my blue background, and I just spaced it to make sure I had kind of a similar distance all the way around those edges. And then I got my needle and my embroidery floss out. I used this pretty blue embroidery floss. It's not so much that it matched, just added a little more contrast. I wanted to do something a little primitive, so I wanted the stitches to show. And there we go. So I already started it. Just used simple running stitch. You can use whatever your favorite stitches are. You can even avoid stitching altogether and just glue it down if you wanted to. Actually tacked it down in the center, and then what I've been doing is just running some stitches along. Oop, that one was going to run a little too deep. Go a little length there. Just working my way through. Just kind of aiming for the tip edge of the snowflake as I come running down. And of course this is a fun project because you can make it your own with any bits and baubles you have lying around the house. You could certainly add some buttons to it. You can add glitter, you can add sequins, you can add all kinds of fun little notion or craft items to your snowflake. Once I get all the way out to the edge, just to stabilize it so it doesn't keep pulling, I just do a quick little knot. And then I go and I jumped right over into, I don't know, I want to call it one of these other little branches off the snowflake. And ran down that little branch and just tacked it down, smooth it out a little bit. And run up the other side. And again, whatever decorative stitches you want to do, you could certainly use French knots or any other decorative stitches that you want to add to your embroidery. You can get super fancy or stay primitive like I just did and just do kind of a broken running stitch. There we are. And of course you're just going to do that up and down each side. I happen to have a 6-sided snowflake here, so I went up and down each side 6 times. Just have this kind of nice primitive whimsical snowflake. Kind of pretty. And then I'd come back and put the wrong sides together. And again, this is where you can certainly, you could do this on a sewing machine. You can do this with a bit of whatever thread you want, but I would just take this thread and I'd go around the outside edge about a 1/4 inch in, go all the way around, stitching those 2 layers together, leaving a 1.5 inch gap or so, 2-inch gap, probably about 2-inch gap, and go ahead and write it inside out after it was sewn together. So we're going to pretend it's sewn together right now, and go ahead and crease your edges down, press your edges out, and then as I said, you could stuff it with some fiber fill, some cotton balls if you wanted to. Then you will want to use some ribbon or some more of your string and attach a loop If you're going to do something with ribbon, I would suggest doing that before you close it, the 2-inch gap, and include it in that space. And if you were going to do something, just something like a piece of plastic or a piece of cardboard, if you wanted to do, instead of doing the pillow, you want something just to add some stiffness to it, slide that in there and do your ribbon. And when that was all said and done, then you could go back and close up those 2 inches, invisible stitch, a blanket stitch, whatever would accent the design that you made. And then you'd have a little ornament to hang on the tree. If you wanted to do some more embroidery, you could certainly do something running around the outside edge, or do somebody's name or a year you could add on to it. And if you didn't want to stitch it, you could certainly do it with some craft paint as well. So that's a fun way of doing things, just getting some templates off the internet, cutting them out, and sewing them on. Of course, you can do other things as well. I went and here's another simple idea of one of my favorite things about the holidays. I love the cheerfulness of holly leaves, the juxtaposition of those bright red berries on green leaves, I think is very pretty. I love holiday greenery. So I printed off the same holly leaf in 2 different sizes, one slightly smaller than the other, as you can see here. I then got 2 different shades of green felt, and I cut one out of each size. And then I just layered them together. Ta-da! And I just did some pretty primitive, you know, running stitches here a little bit, a little vining stitch, just to add some veining, okay? And then I used what was left of my thread, and I just attached it and looped it around here to make a little hanger. So there's a hanger with thread. And what I can come back and do is, I have these really, you could sit here and do some big, you know, hand embroider some red holly berries if you like. But I happen to have some red pom-poms for another craft that I plan to do. And so I thought I would use these. Dun, dun, dun. There we go. So, of course, these are a little bit smaller. Might have wished I had some bigger ones, but you could add, boop, boop, boop. There we go, some holly berries. See if I can do this and lift it up. They were a little bit bigger, that'd be even cooler, but you kind of get what I'm talking about here. And again, I could just hot glue these on, or I could even stitch them on with a little red thread to attach those. There you go. Super, super cute. These could also be fun if you aren't looking, you know, to decorate a tree. Sometimes that can be a little much for some folks, but these could be done as fun gift tags. You could then write on the back of them the to and froms, or just accent anything you wanted to. They could be fun to attach to a little votive candle holder, to make a garland for the front of your door, all kinds of fun things. And felt is super inexpensive, and you can be very creative with it. A couple of sheets can make a lot of different crafts and ornaments. One of the fun things that I saw when I was looking up ideas, a lot of people are trying to figure out ways to commemorate this year. If your family's got a tradition of getting a new ornament for somebody every year that kind of depicts that year or some moment out of that year, a lot of people are trying to figure out ways to depict, you know, our pandemic year, which has definitely been memorable. I've seen people design toilet paper rolls. For a nod to the shortage of toilet paper, they used some white and they just kind of cut it and did a little swirl, curly Q swirl with some embroidery floss or some decorative craft paint to make it look like a roll. That was pretty funny. Or you could do little gingerbread characters or forest critters, and somebody put little masks on all of them. Also, the masks, were made out of just a contrasting color of felt and some embroidery running stitches to make it look like, the ear loops. So imagine a bunch of gingerbread men wearing face masks, or a bunch of penguins wearing face masks or something. Definitely could be pretty funny to commemorate a year that hasn't always made us laugh, but definitely it would make a memorable ornament for some of your family members. So definitely be lighthearted. It's easy to do some simple shapes like stars or Christmas trees. Easy to do. If you don't have a printer, you can also think about tracing designs out of a coloring book, or even if you've got some cookie cutters, you can trace the outline of those cookie cutters and then just add either decorative stitches, more layers of felt, decorative paint onto it to make it yours, and have a lot of fun making these fun, whimsical, different holiday decorations using very simple and inexpensive felt. All right, guys, hopefully you get your December kicked off in good spirits. Hopefully your Thanksgiving was safe and everyone's healthy. And here's to the start of a great holiday season. Wishing you all the best from the Lebanon Senior Center. Have a good night.